the only leg up that our movement has is that we're actually right about this. And a lot of people on some level know that we're right about this.
Welcome to the Our Hen House interview. This is Jasmine Singer.
This is Marianne Sullivan.
And today we're going to be discussing the central question. What is the best way? Or I guess, is there a best way? Or is there any way to get people to stop eating animals? So before we get into our interview, and I might sneeze in the middle of this, trying to make it go away. Watermelon. Okay, it worked. Just a quick reminder about the Our Hen House podcasts. Rising Anxieties comes out on Tuesdays, the Hen Report on Thursdays, and the long form interview, which is this, on Fridays. And bonus for Flock members comes out on Mondays. So we are a podcast and we're on YouTube. So please subscribe and hit like wherever you listen. Today, we're so excited about our two guests. Seth Green is a research scientist at the Humane and Sustainable Food Lab at Stanford, a research group dedicated to accelerating the end of factory farming. He lives in Brooklyn and blogs on Substack at Regression to the Meat. We will link to that in the show notes, but it's regressiontothemeat.substack.com.
That is a great name. I don't even know what regression to the mean means. I know it's some sciencey thing that people say, but
I love it.
Obviously, that's a very clever title.
We can find out more about that as well. And Benny Smith is the programs manager at Allied Scholars for Animal Protection, where he was the first full-time hire after graduating from Brown University in 2023. Welcome to our hen house, Seth and Benny.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Super excited that you guys are both here. And we, of course, have the pleasure of hanging out with Benny on the reg because he is here in Rochester, as all the cool kids are. So we're just so delighted. So let's start.
Poor Seth is only in Brooklyn and there are just no cool kids there.
There's nothing happening here, so don't worry.
You know what? Marianne and I did live in Brooklyn for a while. I think it was pretty cool then.
But
then we left and came to Rochester.
Yeah. And then it was like,
where were you?
Left? At that time, we were in Park Slope. I also lived in Brooklyn Heights in the 90s. But yeah, love Brooklyn. How can you not love Brooklyn? It's like its own universe. Yeah. Exactly. We actually had an Our Hen House TV show for a while, and it's shot downtown at BRIC, which is like a TV studio and community center right by the Brooklyn Academy of Music, I think. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I digress. It's pretty cool there.
I digress.
Very much so. All right, so let's start by just telling people about this fascinating study that we're here to talk about, and then we'll go back and cover some background. So Seth, can you start us off? First off, this study is a meta-analysis. What does that mean?
Yeah. Okay. Great questions. So you introduced this by saying this is the central question. And I just want to point out here that it's so central that we are not the first people to ask it. There are many different ways you can try to approach this. The way we do this is by meta-analysis. A meta-analysis is a study where you take the results of other studies and you come up with a weighted average of those studies. So like in the ideal case, let's say you had 10 studies that are all about the effects of, I don't know, insecticide-treated malaria nets on malaria. It's really easy to do a meta-analysis. You just like put those studies into the blender and you come up with an average answer on malaria cases that just gives more weight to studies with more people in the sample. The question we're doing is a little more complicated because there are so many different approaches to reducing meat, right? Consumption. You could do like norm studies, or you could change the way people see meat, or you could try to introduce them to this fake product called Elwood's dog meat, which Benny has done some of with ASAP, or before ASAP, I guess. And then, but like averaging those results together is hard because what's the average of those two things, like the dog meat thing and the psychology thing? Like it doesn't really mean anything when you average those two very unlike things together. So what we do is we look at all the best studies that's like defined a certain way, and then we group them up by their category. So we try to get like the average effect of psychology experiments. And persuasion experiments and like compare those head to head. That's the paper in a nutshell.
Yeah. I mean, it sounds almost impossible, like almost like comparing apples and oranges, but absolutely vital because none of these studies actually on their own are really that big as far as I can tell. Can you just give us an idea of, and I think you've summarized it in a few different categories, the types of interventions that the studies you were looking at were considering in how to achieve this goal? Well, the
Yeah.
goal might not be exactly the same, but the types of interventions that you considered to include in your meta-analysis and why?
Sure. Okay. So as I said, this question has been asked a lot before, and there have been a bunch of previous meta-analyses and literature reviews. The approach we take is we ask, okay, so what do the good papers say? Like if we look at just papers that meet the following criteria, what do we learn? And those are like, they had to have basically at least 50 people in the whole study. So we didn't want to look at these like tiny studies. There are a couple, like an example of a tiny study is one dorm gets a message saying meat is bad or something like that, and the other doesn't, and you just compare dorm to dorm. That's effectively having like one subject in each treatment pool because you're only like assigning at the level of like one dorm's output versus another. So we try to like not look at any of those studies. We look only at randomized control trials as opposed to observational stuff or things that like things that watch people do something and then say, okay, now what happened to you? Instead, we try to look at things that assign people to some treatment or not. And they have to actually measure meat consumption as opposed to what do you feel about meat or like what do you plan to eat in a week or whatever. And they have to measure that at least a single day after treatment starts. So you want to get like some delay. So when we do this, when we like limit to just these studies, we started out with thousands of studies. We like really did review thousands of studies, and we ended up with 35, and they all basically fall into the following categories. This is actually your question. Sorry for all the preamble. The big one is persuasion, which is trying to talk to people about why they should eat less meat and animal products. We also do a little bit of mostly we're talking about meat, but there are a couple things that are like fish sauce or dairy or cheese or whatever. Persuasion comes in. I'm going to ask you, like, what would one guess here? You know, like, how would you try to persuade people about animals?
I would physical violence probably.
Oh, that's kind of intervention did not make it into our analysis for some reason.
Oh, okay. I mean,
good
I
guess.
think our hen house is sort of built on the foundation that we don't know how, that there is no one right way, that like, for someone it might be handing them a cupcake, and for someone else it might be like open rescue.
And personally, my bent is always to just try to tell people that there are these really terrible things happening to animals. But I know that I now know from reading your paper that that's a total waste of time.
Yeah, well, sorry about that. But
it's my life.
Yeah.
But what are you gonna do?
I mean, okay, so those three answers were give a cupcake, I would call that like kindness or give someone vegan food and see if they like it. And the other ones are animal welfare based. So in the persuasion category, I'm looking at we looked at things that tried to tell people about animal welfare, the environment, and health. I think these are kind of the obvious like conceptual approaches if you're trying to get someone to eat less meat. Although I want to get back to the cupcake point because there's not nearly enough giving people good vegan food and seeing if that does the trick. I would love to see this study more. Okay. So most studies are persuasion. We have these three categories, and some things do a mixture of two categories, like health and environmental reasons to cut back. Then there's choice architecture, which changes how meat is served and presented to people. I'll give two examples of this. The one is, okay, so you're walking into a university cafeteria, and there's like a big billboard menu of all the options. And the treatment is that the vegetarian thing is at eye level. Like it's not rocket science, this stuff. It's just like they just make the vegetarian thing more prominent in your field of vision. And another one, I love this study. It's a university in Thailand. It's a cafeteria, and they're trying to discourage people from eating fish sauce because people are apparently eating too much fish sauce for health reasons. It's like a crazy amount of salt in it. And the treatment is that there's this spoon you put into the fish sauce, and then the spoon gets a hole in it. So it just becomes literally more inconvenient to serve yourself the fish sauce. Like,
Wow.
that's a strategy. I don't know. I wish
I
I'd come
mean,
up.
sure. Unleash those ticks that make everyone allergic to meat.
Yeah,
I bet you didn't
not
test for that one.
No, we did not see any mass releases of alpha gal. Although there is a Dan Brown novel with a very similar plot line,
Yeah.
which is like, what if we just
Really?
feed
So
the
far,
wolf?
your approaches have been outright violence and causing a disease. So
Yeah, what's going on with that? Why is that? What do you want to do, Jasmine?
You know what? I'll call my therapist right when we're done with this interview. I'll get back to you. I
Yeah,
actually
please.
don't have a therapist, so I'll get a therapist. I'll
Yeah.
call them.
That sounds
I'll
like a
get
good
back to you.
idea.
So
based on
with choice architecture, I mean, we've had the people from Greeter by Default on a couple of times, and that's a more common kind of or more familiar kind of type of choice architecture than putting holes in the spoons, right?
Yeah. So fun fact about that, most of those studies don't meet our criteria because they're not randomized control trials. They're like, one hospital gets it and one doesn't, and then we just compare and contrast. Or a lot of default studies are like one-offs. So it'll be, sorry, context. Greener by Default does what their name sounds like. They make things green by default. Okay. And so imagine that like it's a university catering event. The control is you get to choose between a meat option and a veggie option, blah, blah, blah. The treatment is, it says, this conference is vegetarian. Please email us if you want meat. And like, that's enough of a barrier that people just typically don't bother and they get the vegetarian option. But then there's no delayed outcomes. So back to our inclusion criteria, it's just you get the thing you get like the moment you make that choice.
Right.
And this goes back to my newsletter's subtitle, what if there is regression to the meat, which is to say, what if people are like, oh, I didn't have any meat at lunch. I should have twice as much meat at dinner because I have to
So you only want to look at studies that have or interventions that have some kind of lasting effect.
Yeah, or like some evidence
Not-
that the effect lasts just beyond like the minute that some researcher is looking at
Right.
you.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered persuasion, choice architecture. And the last one is like psychology. And these studies try to they change how people think about like what other people think about meat as opposed to what they think about meat. So an example is it'll be a sign at a university cafeteria that's like 95% of your peers agree the veggie burger is a tasty choice. Or like meatless, but like our garden burger is on the rise. It is very popular. And then that's supposed to just make you think that this is happening.
Okay.
Like other people are vegetarian.
Kind of manipulating people.
Yeah. I mean, there are a couple of psychology studies that aren't quite so manipulative. They're like, we want you to take a pledge and then we're going to send you daily text messages to make sure that you're actually doing it. That's kind of like motivational, but I would still call that like psychology broadly.
Right. Okay.
Okay. So those are the studies.
Those are the studies. And as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, you found that nothing works.
Yeah, sorry. We did. I mean, like,
All right.
so let's all
So
go home.
I'm just saying you haven't tried my ways of
Yeah, we haven't tried.
persuasion.
All right, give me a little better overview of the results, but
Yeah,
but
I'll
I
do
didn't.
that.
I want to set people up for the fact that this is not a question that has been answered by your study.
Yes.
And yeah, I will say just I'm going to make the claim in this interview that like, despite most of these RCTs not finding huge effects, it is still extremely important to try to make ethics appeals and convince people to eat less animal products. And I think there are other types of evidence that that we can turn to see that this is very important. But yeah,
I want to get into all. I
summarize.
definitely
Yeah.
want to get into all of that. Actually, Seth,
talk
maybe
about
you
this.
could just summarize quickly what you see as the results in maybe a tiny bit more positive view than I've taken of them. And then Betty, I really want to talk to you about the moral persuasion issue, because that's kind of where I'm at. And I want to hear more about your thoughts on that. But first,
Yeah,
I really do. I don't want to just leave everybody with my conclusion, nothing works. Go into a few
Yeah.
more subtleties than that, Seth.
The main takeaway I would say is that these things probably do work, but the effects are just small. Like we want to end factory farming. That's what our lab is about. And the best intervention, in my personal opinion, in this paper, reduces undergrads' meat consumption by 5.4% over the course of 3 years. That's not like nothing. I mean, it's great. That's, however many animals that is. But that's maybe the most effective, most well-measured
Yeah.
intervention. And it's just a few percentage points. Like my main takeaway from this literature is that you should think of the average intervention as having effects on the order of a few percentage points. So maybe you could get like 100 people to cut back 1%, or like 52% or whatever, or like one person becomes vegan, and these all basically amount to like 1%. And it's not nothing. It means something, but it's not transformational.
Yeah.
We
No,
didn't
we're
see
trying to
anything.
change the world here, and
Exactly.
that's not changing the world.
That's
So Benny, let's take a trip down the moral persuasion route for a moment.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is, correct me if I'm wrong, you concede that the moral persuasion studies are not. It's not like you're making the claim this is the way, these are really working, all this work,
No.
but you just haven't given up on them because one reason you think they haven't been adequately studied, but are there other reasons as well? Even
Yes.
though we may not have the data, do you think there are effective strategies that maybe haven't been tried yet?
So I think there are effective strategies that haven't been studied as much yet. I also think we do have data. So there are lots of historical examples of large numbers of people being convinced to reduce animal consumption. So for example, the provinces of Rajasthan and Gujarat in India, 60 to 80% of the population there is vegetarian. In Japan, most animal products were illegal for over 1,000 years before the Meiji Restoration. There are many major
Is
world
that
religions.
true? Oh my God,
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Many
Wow.
meat products, because of the Buddhist government there, were illegal for hundreds of years. And there are major world religions, right? So Hinduism, many are vegetarian, Buddhism, Jainism, Manichaeism was a major world religion for like over 1,000 years, and they promoted vegetarianism. There are many smaller religions. I think there are just tons of historical examples of large numbers of people being convinced to reduce animal consumption. There are also other things. There are parallels we can look at with other behaviors, right? Where it maybe is very hard to convince people to reduce alcohol consumption, right? But there are still parts of the world where alcohol consumption is very rare or illegal, right? There have been times in history where there was like massive upheaval in terms of how people live their daily lives and their worldviews and their values. It is extremely hard to do that, and I think that's what these RCTs show, is that this is a hard problem. But there are many hard problems that have been solved before to some extent. And I think it speaks more to the level of challenge that we're facing and the level of intensity and resolve that is required. Then, I think we just look at this and we say, well, it doesn't work, so we shouldn't try. Well, this is a self-fulfilling prophecy.
You make me feel like such a hater, Benny. This is such a great little interlude. Yeah, I know. I agree with all that. The only thing I'd add is that it's also partly about the kinds of designs we looked at. Randomized control trials are good at looking at very concrete things like how much meat did you eat on the Tuesday following. They're really not good at looking. It's much harder to design a study that looks at like, did you watch the movie Babe? Or are you James Cromwell, who was in the movie Babe and then became a vegan and then became an activist? That's
and
like
then glued yourself to a few counters and saved 75 cents on soy milk at Starbucks, which I am grateful for.
Wait, did James Cromwell, was he involved in the soy milk thing?
Yeah. Huh. Wasn't he? Am I imagining that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No,
yeah.
He glued his hand to the counter.
The counter.
And he got a lot of press. Yeah. He's a great guy.
He's a great guy. Starbucks recently eliminated the upcharge for plant-based milk.
I know.
Okay. Can I just have a moment? Another digression?
Yeah.
My birthday was yesterday as we're recording this, and I missed my happy birthday Starbucks comp.
Oh, you're right.
Do you know how sad I am right now?
And there's not a window? It's like the day
No, it's on your birthday.
Oh. Man.
All right, can we go back to the topic at hand? Because Benny, I I want to
Ceci,
go
no.
deeper into this, and from
Sure.
what I understand, you like the terms values or worldview change
Yeah.
to behavior change, which is the way we're usually looking at it. And can you drill down a bit on what that means? And
Yeah.
can we talk a little bit? Can we get a little bit into? I hadn't planned on doing this until later in the interview, but it's the topic I'm most interested in. Sorry, Seth. But religion, like I really would like to, because almost everything you just mentioned had to do with religion of some sort.
Yeah.
And I just think that's a really fascinating topic if we're talking about taking this more, not drilling down into the details view of change, but broad worldview kind of view of change. So, all right, I've talked enough. Tell us a little bit about what is the difference between a behavior change and a worldview change, and
Yeah.
what the worldview change is that you're looking for.
Sure. So I think with a lot of these RCTs that we're looking at, what they do is they say, well, we tried one specific intervention. We showed this person a video, we handed them a brochure, we had a conversation with them, and then we measured whether their animal consumption reduced over a certain period of time after that. That is a measure of behavior change, right? I'm going to make the claim, and this is, I think, a controversial claim, that convincing more people to go vegan is much, much more important than convincing a large number of people to marginally reduce their consumption. So I think you will often hear people say, well, if you convince 100 people to reduce their consumption by 5%, that's the same thing as convincing 10 people to reduce by 100%. And so, it's easier to convince one person to reduce by 5%. So you would think that if we just focus on those 5% reductions, that should be the main focus. I think, in fact, you want to focus on getting more people to go vegan, which does not just mean not eating meat or eating animal products. It means rejecting the exploitation of animals and believing that animals matter. And that takes a lot more than convincing someone to just reduce their consumption, right? So it's much more similar. So some of these studies, they'll compare going vegan or not going vegan. They'll compare reducing their consumption to, buying an electric car or recycling or something. And there are studies that look at, well, if we show someone a video, will they start recycling more? And often, yes, that's the case, right? Because it just isn't that hard to recycle, right? And if you start recycling more, you don't get a ton of people getting all offended because you're like doing this very personal thing very differently 3 times a day, right? But with veganism, it is like that. Like if you go vegan, even if you're not trying to convince people at all, people will think you're weird and make fun of you and all this stuff. And Claire Mann has written a lot about the psychology of being vegan, right? And so, I'm not trying to say that veganism is like a religion in all senses, but in the sense that it impacts your worldview as a whole and your daily life and how you interact with the rest of society, is much more like radically changing your entire worldview and outlook on life than just buying an electric car. And I think for this reason, it's also much more important. So what I was originally saying was it's important to be convincing more people to go vegan, because if someone goes vegan, then they will also go and try to convince more people to do so. And so you have much more potential for like exponential growth in the movement than if you just convince a bunch of people to marginally reduce their consumption. And that's not really a visible behavior change. That doesn't influence anyone else. But if you convince, 2 people to go vegan, and those people both convince 2 more people to go vegan and onwards, you can actually get exponential growth in the number of people that support this. And that's really what we need if we want the level of change that is needed in the long term.
So is it a matter of encouraging the development of like a new moral framework in which animals matter, or just tapping into a moral framework that many people have already adopted, in which somehow they accept that animals matter, but that eating meat doesn't violate that principle?
Yeah, I mean, I think most people on some level recognize that animals matter. Most people, if you show them a video of what happens to the animals that they eat, and you say, is this okay? They're going to say, no, that's obviously not okay. Most people, in fact, if you ask them to watch one of these videos, they will say, no, I don't want to see this, because they already know that it's not okay. And I think that is the only leg up that our movement actually has. So if we talk about choice architecture, if we talk about any of these other interventions to reduce consumption. These are things that the meat industry can also do and can do at a much larger scale than us, right? Like, of course, McDonald's knows about choice architecture.
That's
It
right.
knows how to convince people to like eat marginally more chicken. And it's not that hard for them to just start an ad campaign, right? I mean, we've seen alternative proteins just tank in the last couple of years because it just wasn't that hard for the meat industry to run a bunch of campaigns convincing people that Beyond Burgers are terrible for you and get everyone to be scared of alternative proteins. The only leg up that our movement has is that we're actually right about this. And a lot of people on some level know that we're right about this. And so we have the ability to appeal to people's like capacity for reasoned choice in their behaviors and their like compassion for others. And that ability to actually make choices, ironically, is the only thing that distinguishes us from animals, right? The meat industry has everything else on their side, right? They can appeal to people's sort of physical desires. They can appeal to people's social conditioning, their traditions that they're sort of robotically following. They can appeal to peer pressure. They can appeal to, lust for power. The only thing that we can actually use that gets us a leg up on all of that is that we have to just want it a lot more than them, and we have to be willing to push a lot harder to grow the movement.
Okay, I got a
I
question.
mean, you're speaking my language. Oh, please, Seth, go ahead.
Okay, so Benny, thanks. We'll get the questions you're asking here were at the heart of the Reducitarian Summit, which was this conference I went to last weekend in Atlanta. The Reducitarian movement is like exactly what you just said you're not down with, like a lot of small reductions widely spread. At that conference, there was a talk about blended proteins or whatever we're calling them, like balanced things. There's like 50% beef, 50% whatever. And like for me, that was my line. Like I'm down with reducitarianism, but I hit that talk and I was like, oh man, like this has like a normalization aspect that bothers me. Where's your line? Actually, all three of you. Where do you have a line where it's like this might work, but it makes me feel bad or queasy? Does any of you have like a thing in mind that
Oh my God.
elicits this?
Dude,
I
you
think
need
my
a
line
podcast.
has changed over time, and I'm not sure it's a line really, but I don't think I feel. I mean, Betty, you're speaking my language definitely. I mean, the passion and the just the fact that we're right for some reason, like we're right about this. We may not be right about everything. We may not be better than other people in other ways, but this is what we got right. That's that. But I do think that I tend to think that all of the other, and this is all right. Now, I don't want to hijack this interview. I want it to be, and now we're getting into the stuff I really feel strongly about. But
I want to know. I want to hear.
and I'm not. I don't have clarity about totally. But this movement has been so divided, and I've been doing this for a long time, and about the whole question of whether welfare reforms not only aren't the way forward, but are actually putting us back and making people feel more comfortable. Like real people have been very, very divided about tactics. And I tend to think that there is value not just in the one that you're talking about, Betty, like just making the case for why this is the wrong way to live and this is a terrible thing. But also, I mean, the food matters. Like people are a lot more likely to pay attention to their morals if the food is delicious. And almost everything that people are doing, and even the welfare reforms, I do not tend to see them as setting us back. And I think there's been very few studies about that, but to the extent there have been, it has indicated that they're not setting us back. And that doesn't surprise me because I don't think most people are thinking when they buy meat, oh, should it, is this more cruel than that? They're just buying it. I mean, the vast majority of people. So I have a hard time believing it may be poor use of resources, but we can't really always decide what other people's resources are. I'm not close to that argument, but I would want much, much better evidence. So I think that almost every intervention is at least not doing harm and might be doing some good. But the one that really lives for me is, somehow, some way, we have to reach this this insane conflict or no, maybe it's not a conflict, this lack of conflict within people who care about animals, which isn't everybody, but it is a lot of people who care about animals and just do not associate it with what they're eating. It's like, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that people
Well,
go
I
around.
just
I mean, it's weirder than people voting for Trump. It's just bizarre that people actually who care. I'm just going to tell one little story. I'm sorry, Jasmine, just one little story. I won't say who it was, but I was talking to a couple a couple of weeks ago. They're relatives of mine, and the woman is vegetarian, the man is not. And we were talking about because of an article I'm writing about a legal case about animal sacrifice, chicken sacrifice, Santeria, that sort of thing. And I was talking about how the Supreme Court had a problem with it because it only focused on killing animals for religious reasons and not for killing chickens for other reasons. And the man, who is somebody I respect and is a thoughtful person, said, well, what are the reason do people kill chickens for?
For pleasure, obviously. For eating. Yeah.
wow.
Because I love it.
I just want to go back to what you just asked, but I do want to hear Benny's answer to this. I when I hear you, Seth, say like, where's your line of that's not okay? The way that I interpret it is like a difference between strategy and, personal philosophy, because I personally am not comfortable with welfare reform, but that's just not something I would focus on, because I think part of being an effective activist is speaking to your own authenticity. And for me, that wouldn't work. However, there was a point like 20 years ago when I did focus on welfare reform. And I see welfare reform making differences, like certain activists, certain groups that are working on it from a holistic perspective, meaning veganism is their bottom line, or they're strategically trying to drive up egg prices. But to me, that is a line that I wouldn't cross.
And so I guess that the question was relating to blended meat, that you have a feeling of queasiness from this, but maybe you think it works. And how do you weigh those two things?
Or forget the weighing is hard. Let's ask the simpler question. Where is the
Mhm.
thing where you think like this might work, but like, I get a cringy thing about it?
So I think the feeling of queasiness and cringiness about something being wrong is what works. That is how you get people to change their behavior and their view on this stuff. And I think this is kind of like false dichotomy or something. I think I think with the blended meat, specifically my question would probably be, well, why do we think if they could run all these campaigns to get everyone to not want the plant-based burgers, why is it going to be different with, a half beef, half tofu burger or whatever it is? I mean, if it works, it works, right? Any reduction is good. That is true. I think just the claim that I'm making is that if you want the maximal reduction in the long term, we need to increase the number of people that actually are ideologically aligned with the vegan movement. And so, we can talk about lots of different types of campaigns and tactics and strategies. None of those things happen if there aren't people who want to run the campaigns. And the people who want to run the campaigns are the people who are ideologically aligned. And those people are generally vegan.
Okay, so our meta-analysis finds that on average, appeals to animal welfare reduce meat consumption by 3/100ths of a standard deviation. And the materials produced, this is in the supplement, sorry if I should have highlighted this. Materials produced by animal welfare organizations like Mercy for Animals, etc., actually have a tiny backlash effect. The average effect is like plus 4/100th of a standard deviation increase in meat consumption. So I guess I'd ask for you all, like, does this update your beliefs? Do you like see the world in a new way in light of this finding, or is this something you already knew?
Well, before I answer that, because I'm not sure how to answer that. No, it doesn't change my beliefs, because I don't think that, I'm not convinced that the ultimate intervention has been tried and the ultimate data has been gathered. So I'm not willing to change everything I believe based on that.
I
And
didn't
I
ask if
can
you would
totally
change
believe
everything. I asked if you would change anything.
but
Like,
but I'm sorry, what?
I mean, like, has it updated any of your beliefs? Like, have you like learned anything new about the world, or are we just sort of
Oh,
like all going?
sure. But I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not sure it's anything new about the world because it doesn't surprise me. I mean, we all know we've been doing this a long time. We all
yeah.
know that. I mean, I think I recently read an article. I wish I had a quote from it. I listed all different types of theories of change of different animal groups, and the thing I concluded was that so far none of them have worked. I mean, that's like
Mhm.
so this doesn't surprise me, and I'm not surprised that there's a backlash effect because we all know people who whose response to being told that they shouldn't eat animals is to like, haha, I'm going to eat even more animals. I mean, that's not that uncommon a response. But there is something I want to ask you, which was in your notes that you submitted to us, before this interview, and that was uh that basically nothing works as far as we know. But you also asserted that campaigners should use tried and true methods like showing dominion.
Mm.
Like, why is that tried and true? And you do have some evidence that that is tried and true. It's not extensive evidence, but there was one study. And isn't that like kind of saying like, well, actually, if we could get anybody to watch this and we could get anybody to actually see something that actually proved to them, made it enter their brain somehow, like forced it into their brain, that would be effective. And it was based, even though it was based on animal welfare.
Okay, it's a subtle and interesting question here. I would say, okay, so what for context for listeners, there is a ongoing study by Peter Landry and Lisa Kramer at the University of Toronto. Its title is How the Sausage is Made. And basically, they sat Toronto business undergrads down and had them watch either a documentary about mushrooms or they had them watch Dominion, or at least like 10 minutes of Dominion that are about pigs. And the outcome measure is as compensation for participating in the study, you get some probability of having a meal compensated for you at the dining hall or whatever canteen. And like they ask students before they watch the movie, right after they watch the movie, and a week after they watch the movie. And according to this study, which is it's preliminary to your point, um, watching Dominion reduces consumption of meat by about 13.5%, which is like 2 to 3 times larger than just about anything else in that we looked at. And it is a week later. It's not perfect, but it's something. And I did update my beliefs about this question, and I've been thinking about it. What Peter Landry would say if he were here is that Dominion is probably the best of all the available documentaries in terms of like IMDb ratings. And like if you personally watch it, it's like this really powerful, impactful thing. So I think what he would say is to try to tried and true methods is like, a lot of groups want to like reinvent the wheel here. They want to like, this is our branded documentary. Like we made it. And then you get like, there's a lot of reasons for that. Like you win a grant, so you have to do something. And then you have to like show that your funders that you came up with a video. Peter would say, stop doing that. Just do Dominion. Just focus on getting Dominion out to people. I'm not saying this is a hard thing to do. I'm not saying, that's what I agree with.
Because that is kind of the hard part.
Yeah. And then I would say that there's this other problem that like you already hit it. Like how are we going to do this? Like what people like about the choice architecture studies is that theoretically you can just like whoosh blow them up and have them be everywhere. How are we going to like force everyone to watch Dominion? I don't know.
Yeah, and the choice architecture too. Like I don't my feeling is like I think I already said this, but apparently you guys are interviewing me instead of me interviewing you.
I don't know.
So I'll just continue.
I want to hear what you
But
think.
I think that's important too. Like actually getting somebody to try a vegan meal, even though they didn't know they were doing it, is actually a good thing because then they eat it and they're like, oh yeah, that's fine. So I don't think any of these are necessarily bad ideas. But Benny, like this, I mean, I assume that getting people to watch Dominion is exactly the kind of intervention you want to see done. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's something we've worked on a lot at Allied Scholars is we do a lot of outreach where we're showing footage, and also we've run events where we had an event last year where we got 250 people to watch Dominion. And I think that kind of thing is, definitely extremely impactful based on the internal results we have. I wanted to jump back on to the point about backlash effects that Seth was mentioning, where yes, there are studies that show that seem to have a very small negative effect in terms of the amount of animal products that people are consuming. I think it's important to like recognize that this could be true, and it could be also true that those interventions are increasing the number of vegans. And I mean, I sort of made this point before, but like none of these studies are really looking at what is effective at convincing people to fully go vegan, increasing the number of people who are fully like on board with this stuff. And ultimately going vegan is not the only thing we want. We also want to increase the number of like vegan activists, the people who are vegan and also speaking up to convince other people to go vegan, because that's the real value of getting people to go vegan. And I think, it would be great if we had a ton of RCTs and studies showing like what gets you from.
What are
Sorry,
RCTs?
Oh, randomized controlled trials, which is the
Thanks.
type of study that we were looking at in this meta-analysis.
Sorry, go ahead.
No worries. Yeah. So it would be awesome if we had a ton of studies showing this. Unfortunately, we don't. And so maybe Seth can help us with that. Maybe other researchers can help us with that. But for now, that we just don't have studies. And so we just have to act based on whatever other types of evidence we have. And so you can look at historical examples. You can talk to people who are vegan to figure out what convinced them to go vegan. I would like to sort of suggest one point about how something that would actually work to convince more people to go vegan. But we can. I don't want to distract too much from what you guys were saying before.
No, now I want to hear. Now I want to hear.
Sure. So cool. So let's imagine
the answer.
Well,
tell us what it is.
This is something that we can't actually do, but this is something that I'm 100% sure would work if it were possible to do this. So let's say there were an island called Plantlantis, where everyone on this island is vegan. There are like 30 million people on this island, and all of them are vegan. And like animal rights is completely woven into like the culture and the society. Kids learn about animal rights in like their civics classes. It's enshrined in the Constitution. There are like monuments of Peter Singer or Ingrid Newkirk by the government buildings. And like just every day, if you drive down the street, you see all kinds of like vegan messages and animal rights stuff, right? So, and then let's say you take someone from America who grew up eating meat, and Bob goes and lives in Plantlantis for 30 years, let's say. Probably after 30 years of being like super exposed to tons of messages and I don't know, seeing Dominion multiple times and all that stuff, probably after 30 years and Bob comes back to America, he's probably vegan, or at least like more than 50% of the time vegan or something, right? Because people are just influenced by those around them, right? But the reason that it's very hard to convince people to go vegan right now is that our society is the opposite of that, right? You're constantly bombarded with ads for animal products. Everyone around you is eating animal products. It's like enshrined in our laws that it's okay to murder animals, right? And so the trick is to figure out how can we like overcome that sort of brainwashing and conditioning. But I think I guess I'd be curious what Seth would say about this, but I think like there are pretty like clear ways to convince people of things. It just requires a lot more than what has ever like been done before.
Well, what about the things that have been tried? I mean, moral philosophy is certainly the main persuasion I think the main persuasion tactic that has been tried, but most people don't seem to get their morals from moral philosophy. I think most people get the intervention that you were talking about before, most people get their morals from religion.
I don't know about
I'm sorry,
American.
Seth. I feel like Benny asked you a question, and then I stepped on it.
But that's a great starting point. Okay, so this past weekend, I talked to Josh Balk, who I would describe as a personal hero. He founded the Just Company, as well as the Accountability Board, and he was involved with Humane World for a long time. And I was describing to him this study I want to run, which I'm going to describe to you now. Okay, chickens are small, cows are big. When you eat chicken, or not you, an American, not you guys, obviously. When you choose to eat chicken versus cow, you're playing a trolley problem game, which is like this moral philosophy experiment where it's like, would I kill one person to save 5? Because chickens are so much smaller, it takes like 200 times more chickens to feed to create a given amount of meat than it does a cow. We call this the small body problem. My lab is pretty focused on this. And I wanted this study in mind because the reason that we care about this is because if beef consumption goes down in America because of climate reasons and everybody shifts to chickens and pigs and fish, we're going to end up killing a lot more animals.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this is the small body problem. I had this idea to like run a study where we talk to people about this, and Josh was like, we were just at breakfast. He said, I don't think that's how people make their decisions. Like those of us who actually do take moral philosophy seriously enough to like change our lifestyles based on this abstract reasoning, we're weird.
Yeah. Very
We're not-
rare. It's
yeah.
very rare.
We're not it's
It's
not right.
I mean, it was an important step, but I think we got stuck in like moral philosophy for 20 years, saying this is the end. This is how we figured it out, and we just have to let everybody know. But
Well, I think there's
I
a
think
kind
you're
of
right. Moral philosophy is not, and like if you're going to like the whole idea that you worry about there being more animals than fewer, like if you come to that conclusion, you just stop eating them completely.
yeah. I talked to a friend about this, and she was like, "Yeah, but I think that both of those things are part of the food chain, so it doesn't matter how many of them you kill."
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. You need to
foundational.
find new friends.
That's one friend. I hang out with plenty of vegans.
I'm sorry.
But
I was joking.
yeah.
But
Don't worry.
so
If I could one follow up on
yeah,
this
please.
would just be
Please.
the observation that like my speculation about why we got into this rabbit hole about like moral philosophy is because vegan activists look inwards, see what convinced them, and try to spread the good word. And
Totally.
the problem is
Totally.
that we're weird and we forgot that part.
Even if it wasn't just moral philosophy, it is clear that it is hard for any of us to understand why people hear about what's happening, and don't say, oh, okay, I'll go vegan, because that's what we did for whatever reason. It would be nice to think it's because we're finer human beings, but we know that's like there's a lot of vegans who are total assholes, and not total, but mostly not great people. And also that there are many people who aren't vegan who really do seem to be great people, like much better than I am in many ways. So that's not the only answer. One of the things I did want to get back to with you, Betty, was this idea of religion, because this is something that I always think of. Like moral philosophy is not where people get their moral compass. It's mostly, I think, religion, which also not all animal rights people, but religion is not really popular among animal rights folks by and large. Do you think that that's a route to creating this worldview change that you want to see?
I guess, what do you have in mind?
Well, if I had in mind, I might do it, but
Yeah.
I just feel like all of the major religions, even Buddhism, ones that have like actually thought about the issue, totally give themselves a pass on the issue of animals. I mean, they exist to guide people. The 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 Catholicism, which is the religion I grew up in, that's not why I know this, it's because I looked at it, actually has, it has a catechism, which it's boiled down like explanation of the 10 commandments, what you're supposed to do with your life and all of that. And it specifically says in there that you shouldn't cause animals to suffer unnecessarily. I mean, it says that, and yet they do nothing, absolutely nothing. They never even talk about it. So should this be the campaign? I've noticed that Wayne Shung is now in divinity school, of all things. Is this the direction that we should be headed in to proselytize for animals? Maybe this isn't something that I just thought this might be something you had been thinking about, but if it's not what you want to talk about, that's
Yeah.
fine.
No. I chatted with Wayne Chung recently. Yeah, that's interesting. I don't have a lot of good insights on how you like necessarily engage with current like established religions. I think you would want to talk to someone who has like a lot of ins with those. And I think that's a very hard problem to solve. I think there are parallels between this and growing a religion, right? So I do think like Catholic. So you talk about Catholicism as an example, right? Catholicism has had a huge impact on the world over the last 2,000 years, and they didn't do that by sending a few people to the Roman Senate and trying to convince them to like marginally change a few policies here and there, right? So, for example, infanticide was very common in the Roman Empire, right? And the early Christians were against infanticide. And they did not go to the Roman Senate and convince them to do infanticide more humanely or something. What they did was they slowly, over like 500 years, grew their numbers. And eventually Christianity took over the Roman Empire and infanticide was, abolished in much of the West. Um, I think that's probably a better model for how you grow animal liberation than trying to take something that has less than 1% of the population right now and sort of tricking the other 99% of the population into doing a bunch of things that they don't actually agree with yet or they don't really want to do.
You've also said that moral persuasion efforts have many other benefits besides directly convincing people to go vegan. I'm curious about that. Like what?
Yeah. So I think one of the biggest benefits is the effect that moral persuasion has on the people who are doing the persuasion, right? So if I think we want to be thinking about how the message that the movement is sending to itself is impacting the movement, right? So if you tell all of the vegans not to advocate for veganism, if you tell everyone, no, we need to make sure that we don't have any tiny, lashback effects on people who consume animal products. We need to make sure that nobody says, wow, I'm mad at you. I'm going to eat an extra burger today. Then what we're telling people is to not say what they believe. And, we were talking about, I think someone alluded to the fact that beliefs follow actions, actions don't follow beliefs. And so if the action that you're taking is constantly self-censoring and not saying what you think, you're actually going to think something different eventually. The more you self-censor, the more you don't actually say that you care about animals, the less you're ultimately going to care about animals. And it ultimately sort of helps the meat industry brainwash more people, right? And so we can remain a movement of private vegans who don't sort of say anything and who don't actually advocate, or we can actually try to grow. And the cost of trying to grow is that you have to say unpopular things. You have to be willing to have people sometimes dislike you. And I think in the long run, if we want to grow, we really need to be doing that. We really need to be getting more people to be comfortable actually speaking up and saying what they think. And America is a great place to do that, right? Because we have really strong free speech protections.
I don't think Betty's kidding about that.
For the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you're speaking our language, Betty. I mean, that's really what our hen house was founded in order to do, to help people find their way to change the world for animals and to even when it's hard to speak up. Of course, people choose their battles, and I understand that, but not choosing them at all is definitely a mistake. I think that we've gone way over here because I could talk about this shit for the whole day.
Can I ask him
But
questions?
we probably should.
I have some
Sorry?
questions. I have some questions. May I?
Oh, please go
If we
ahead.
get time, we can always edit it out or whatever. I'm now coming to understand that my worldview is actually pretty different than the three of yours, which is interesting to me. And I love dissension. I feel like that's where we're going to find what works. I have a question for Benny here. Was this so? Context in this story, I'm going to out you, Benny. Sorry about this. Benny and I met at an effective altruism conference, which is kind of this movement organized around hard-nosed, do what works, don't worry about the, how it feels or whatever type thinking. And I'm now this paper reflects those commitments. I'm wondering, was it hard for you to swallow some of what you believe as we were writing it?
So I will say I went vegan as a result of engaging with effective altruism. I was involved with an EA group in college and they had me watch Dominion. And I 100% agree with the perspective of feelings don't really matter. You just have to do what works. That's absolutely true. It's just the question of, well, what actually works, right? And I think the paper that we wrote is saying a true thing, which is that the RCTs didn't find strong effects, and that's absolutely true. And it's important to be looking at the evidence very clear-eyed and be willing to update our beliefs in the face of new evidence and swallow hard truths. Yeah, I think that's true.
I guess my next question.
I would like to add to Seth that I I'm not sure our worldviews are that different.
That's because I
I
haven't really
I
shared what I think. Yeah, I
oh,
Well,
believe
what
I
is
don't.
it?
Yeah, I think that a lot of this stuff, a lot of the things that I see in the vegan movement have the net effect of flattering the sensibilities of vegan people, but are not actually aimed at expanding the movement. Um, I think that the fundamental, like the big truths that I try to struggle with every day are one, people like meat. It's not like a moral thing or a religious thing. It's just it tastes good, it feels good. Um, and as incomes rise, meat consumption goes up. So this past weekend at the Reducitarian Summit, someone was saying that like we need to learn in America what Germany is doing to like cut down on meat because apparently meat consumption has leveled off in Germany. I, resident hater, was like, isn't income growth in Germany negative right now? So doesn't that like just totally explain why they've stopped eating meat at the same rates? Because they can't afford to eat anymore. This is like such a simple, unfun story of the world. I think
I'm
that
not
income,
sure that's
yeah.
I'm perfectly willing. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
I was just
I gotta
saying,
work.
sorry for being such a hater. Please go ahead.
No, I'm not objecting to anything that, like Betty said, it's not like whatever works is fine with me. But I'm not sure that's true. Meat is unbelievably cheap. Like it's not the world has changed in that. I mean, because of factory farming and because of the way farming works and grain production, I don't think that meat is really beef may be very expensive. There might be certain types of meat, but certainly chicken is not. And it's also extremely convenient. It's also very easy to cook. Like there's absolutely very few reasons for poor people. Maybe we're not talking about like rural people in Africa, in particularly deprived areas of Africa where it's difficult to obtain meat. But I just don't think that's so true anymore. So I'm not sure that's the reason for what's going on in Germany. I doubt that Germans are so that their incomes have dropped so much that they're thinking, well, let's have beans instead of Wienerschnitzel this week. So I am totally on board with doing whatever works. I'm just not sure that we've established what works.
Yeah, I agree
Do
with.
vegans sometimes piss people off and make them less likely to be vegan? Sure. Like vegans are annoying. People hate us. Some of us are better than others, and I'm not saying I'm one of them at being persuasive, but I think we started off this conversation with the idea that nothing works, and I think that I'm concluding that we're still there. Nothing works. I'm not willing to give up on the idea that people who care about animals might, if the right intervention is made, actually say, "Oh, I'm not going to eat them anymore." I'm
I
not willing to give up
Yeah,
on that.
neither am I.
But one thing I would just add on some of this is that I think the current state of the movement is that we're very, very small, right? We have almost no money, almost no people, almost no like history of success in terms of like the vegan movement of the like modern, late 20th century, early 21st century vegan movement. And I think we can look at that, at the fact that we're a very, very young movement and that we haven't won big yet and say, well, nothing works. We don't know what we're doing. But I think that's not like sort of the winning mentality. I think like the mentality we want to have is that it's like a startup and we're going to come up with an idea and we're going to go all in on it and we're going to try it. It's probably going to fail and we're going to try again. That's fine because we're starting from basically zero and it's not that hard to rebuild from zero to zero again. And you just keep trying things until you find something that works and eventually you win. And there are historical examples of people winning, right? And it is possible. And I think if we have this, you know, I think there's some level of contradiction between saying, well, nothing works, but we're still going to try, right? Like, why would you try? If you really know that nothing works, why would you try at all, right? I think the only reason anyone is trying is because they do believe that something can work. And like, if you're in this fight, like, I think we have to be willing to like believe that something is going to work, even if it's not what you're doing right now, and just keep updating based on evidence and keep trying things.
I'm not saying we disagree about any of that. I would say that between us, probably if I had to identify the cleavage, it is that like whether we think things that are coded vegan are likely to be in the future the most effective ways. I'm totally agnostic about this question. I have no idea. It seems like I think the rest of you believe or want to believe that this is true. By contrast, I would say at the Animal Welfare Economics Conference in 2024, Tyler Cowen gave this keynote speech where he was like, he's an economist and a firebrand.
Yeah.
He gave this speech where he was like, this is probably about as much moral concern as there is ever going to be for animal welfare. If you look at other moral issues that animal welfare advocates want to compare to, like slavery, you would say they like won the fight, but in fact, there are more slaves alive today than there ever were in the past. So like we can expect something similar to happen even if we win the fight. And that the things we should be investing in are like totally not vegan coded. For instance, Ozempic, like anything that reduces appetite across the population is like also has a reduction effect on meat. And like this is way better than making people watch Dominion. We should just try to make Ozempic
But
cheap.
I think that's great. I think that, all of these interventions are great. And I mean, I guess one of the things that I just wanted to end with was saying that what we've always thought here is not that we have the right way or that anybody has the right way, but that different people are going to do different things, and that's okay. And it's really great to think about. I'm all for free Ozempic, not just for the animals, for the people too. I'm all for it. So that's a great intervention. I don't think that we have to be at odds about what the right intervention is, because different things work on different people, and different people are drawn to different ways of life and different ways of advocacy. So today has been a really huge insight into both of your thoughts. I feel like we could do this all day, but we're not going to.
Okay.
But we can continue the conversation a little bit for our flock on our bonus episode. But thank you so much for doing this and for sharing all of these thoughts. It's really been fascinating.
Yeah, we really appreciate it, you guys. I'm ready for your podcast. I would tune in every week.
Thank you.
Totally.
For those of you who are listening, thank you so much for being here. The flock, our darling flock, you will get your bonus content with Seth and with Benny. That will come out on Monday. And if you are in the flock, thank you so much. If you're not, maybe you want to join us. We're in our end of year fundraising right now. And it is when we do the vast majority of our fundraising for the year. All of the dollars that you are able to donate are tripled between now and the end of the year. So thank you so much. You could go to ourhenhouse.org/support, and we'll talk to you next week.